So this stove setup right here is heavier than what I normally carry. Some people would even say on the internet that it's not ultralight. But honestly, I think this might be one of the best ultralight beginner setups that I've seen. And today I'm going to show you exactly why. If you've been following my stove series, you know that my favorite setup is my pocket rocket with a titanium pot paired with it. It's super light and it's super simple. But you probably also saw the video where I talked about a lot of the mistakes people make with ultralight stoves. Tipping them over, burning themselves, fighting the wind, spilling their food, and just getting frustrated with having to deal with the stove. So when in some of my videos, a bunch of you guys kept talking about fire maple. And because I hadn't really had to look for a stove in a long time, I really hadn't noticed this company until I started looking into them. And when I started looking into them, I found this stove that really piqued my interest. And so I reached out to them and I asked them, would they send it to me so that I could check it out? I really wanted to be able to test it in real conditions. So I brought it out here with me to Death Valley, where I could actually see if this was going to be a really good stove for beginners. So this is a remote canister stove, which means that the fuel canister is off separate from the stove. Unlike your traditional canister stove, which would screw onto the top of the fuel. I also asked them while I was talking to them if they would send me a pot that they would typically pair with this stove for a good ultralight setup. And they sent me the 600 milliliter pot here that they have. So right off the bat, I really like this thing as a cooking system because it's not just a burner that sits on top of a fuel can with a pot that you're trying to balance on top. So let's start off with the thing that I know everybody pays attention to the most. This setup altogether is heavier than my normal setup. My titanium pot is lighter than this pot. And the pocket rocket, I think, is just a smidge lighter than the actual stove itself here, but not by much. So if I'm fast packing or really trying to go as ultralight as possible, I'm probably going to still take my original setup. But I tell you what, this thing is quickly gaining my interest and could potentially be something I carry on regular backpacking trips. Because as you guys hear me say on this channel a lot, weight isn't everything, especially for somebody who's learning. So let's talk about some things that I really like about this stove. To start off with, the big win here is stability. I love how low to the ground the stove is. It makes it so much more stable. The stove itself is a little bit wider than, say, my standard ultralight canister stove. So it allows to have a little bit more room to be able to sit, even if you're just pairing it with a regular pot or wanting something a little bigger or wider. It works really well in being able to give that a little bit more surface area to sit on so that you're not as likely to accidentally tip the stove. I love how it all really just sits stable together. Even the legs on this thing really just kind of sits well, even in uneven ground like I am right now. There's rocks everywhere here. I would normally be having issues with my canister stove a lot of times, especially when you get to camp and you're tired and you're just quickly trying to get some water going so that you could get dinner going. And you just set your stove down. And if you're not paying attention and you haven't really learned some of those hard lessons about making sure that that canister is really level, then all it takes is one little rock or one little twig or something that could easily get it off balance to where then when you go to set that heavy pot of water on there and then boom, it just falls over. Which, that may not be a big issue if you're camped out somewhere next to a stream. But if you're like me right now and you're camped out here in the middle of the desert, I had to hike in all of my water. And so losing any bit of it would not be a good plan. One of the other things I really like about this setup too is, as I've mentioned it in here, is how that the pot just locks into the stove. And so they make these slats on the bottom of the stove, on the pot, that they'll just fit perfectly in with this stove. And so once you get it in there, like it just sits on there, which adds a little bit even to that stability of being able to do it. So you're not just balancing a pot or trying to get it perfect on top of a canister stove. When I was a beginner, I used to mess up getting the pot on the stove perfectly and getting it centered all the time. And so it was not uncommon to accidentally get it too far to the right, and then all of a sudden just a little bit of a breeze or anything, and all of a sudden it tips over. Being able to lock the pot into the stove by resting it down on it, it removes a lot of these chances of mistakes. One of the other things I really like about this setup here is the actual pot itself. So I really love this longer handle. I know that by adding in the longer handle, adding in a little bit of protection here with the rubber handle on there, adds a little bit of weight. But the thing that it does, though, is it really protects you a lot more. Because I can't tell you, that's one of the things that I dislike the most about my Toaks pot is those little bitty handles. They're awesome in the sense of being able to, you know, push them in and be minimal, but they almost always get hot. And then in the beginning, when I was first backpacking a lot, I can't tell you how many times I would forget to grab something like a pot holder or something to be able to grab them, and I would singe my fingers. So for me, I think, you know, especially beginner friendly, having a handle like this is just awesome. I even really like this thing so far in the sense of what they've got. And it's really easy to be able to put it up. The other thing I really like about this pot is that it all just locks in on itself. I don't have that with my Toaks either. So I can get and put all of this in there, put the canister, put the stove, everything in it, and then lock it in. And I don't need to have a bag to be able to hold it together like I do with my Toaks setup. And then I also really like the lid with this pot. I like how it's got the rubber top on it, so I don't have to worry about it getting hot and burning my hands or anything on it. I also like that it's always up, because one of the challenges, you know, that I have with the little metal triangle on my pot a lot of times is that it'll fall down whenever I'm sitting there cooking with it, and then I got to try to figure out how to get it back up without burning myself. So I like that. And then I like that they have bigger slats in their top here, so that if I actually wanted to strain out water, that it would work really well for that. So I really like this pot as a part of this setup. The fourth thing that I really like about this is its boiling efficiency. It does boil water really fast. At some point, maybe when I'm back home and I have both of the stoves side by side, I'll time it out to see just how fast each one does. But this here, this part of this pot has this heat exchanger on the bottom. And so, of course, that's one of the things that adds a little bit of weight here. When you really look at this pot, if you didn't have the heat exchanger and you didn't have the longer handle and stuff on it, the pot itself would probably be very comparable in weight to my Toaks titanium pot, because it's just a titanium pot as well. But I think adding this in adds some benefits, especially for a beginner, because it's going to help you heat your water faster, which is really going to help you whenever you're at camp. And when you have spent the day on the trail and you're hungry and you're tired, you know, the faster you can get water boiled means the faster you can be eating food and feeling good about yourself. And for a new backpacker, I think that's huge. The other thing that I noticed about this setup here is going to be similar to something I would say about my canister stove as well with the Pocket Rocket, is you're going to have some wind challenges. And so the thing, though, that I noticed about this that I think, and the reason why I'm listing it kind of as a pro, is that because it's a lower profile, it's a lot easier to block the wind on this. And then also, too, as a part of the stove setup, they actually send a really ultralight windscreen that comes with it, which, of course, I didn't bring out with me. I forgot it at home for this trip. But with its having its lower profile, I think it makes this thing so much easier to be able to use natural blocks to be able to block the wind as well. Because a lot of times I'll just use a rock, find a rock to sit the stove next to, or maybe a stump somewhere, or just a bush, or even your backpack you can kind of lean up to just help block the wind so that it doesn't really blow that flame around. And then having that heat exchanger too, and then getting it a little bit lower and closer to the flame also, I think, helps a little bit with dealing with some of that wind too as well. So I think that makes it a lot easier to have a good experience when you're dealing with a canister stove out in the backcountry. All right, and the last thing that I noticed as a pro, and then we'll get to some of the cons that I've thought about it, is that the controller here seems to work really well at being able to control the flame. I think that having this and being able to get the flame, you know, to either roaring hot or simmering it down is really gonna, you know, for those of you that do more than just boil water out on the trail, it's gonna give you really good flexibility to be able to actually cook something in, say, a pot. So far I really like this setup. Now, let's talk about some of the things that, a lot of people don't talk about. I think when you're a new backpacker, you don't quit backpacking because it's hard. You quit backpacking because your systems get frustrating. You have things fall over. You spill your food. You burn your hands. And it gets to that point where nothing seems to work right. I think this setup here will mitigate a lot of those frictions. I think this is a really good stove to help build confidence. When you're new and you're out here, the last thing you need is any of those big challenges. And so having something that takes away some of those challenges, so what if it adds a little bit of extra weight? I think it's definitely worth it. Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. It is heavier than my other setup. And screwing on the bottom of this thing was a little awkward at first, but you get used to that pretty quick. So if you're chasing the lightest setup that you could have, then maybe you won't like this. But for somebody that's learning, I think this is a solid stove. I would definitely recommend this for new backpackers, or if you're trying to teach your kids how to start getting used to using a backpacking stove. If maybe you're a weekender and doing short trips, or if you're just somebody who's tired of tipping over and spilling the water, then I think this would be a great stove for you. And honestly, I think I might actually keep using this more than I expected to at first. Because as we talk about a lot on this channel, having the lightest weight system is not always the perfect setup for you. Sometimes adding some extra comfort items to that is actually worth a little bit of weight. Now, for those of you that are interested in checking out the setup, I'll put the links to both the stove and the pot down in the description below. But I'm curious, what stove are you guys using right now? And would you recommend your stove to a beginner? And what's the worst cooking fail that you've had out on trail? I'd love to know. Put in the comments below. And if you want more real-world backpacking tips like this, mistakes and all, hit that subscribe button and hang out with us here. Now it's time to get this thing roaring and get some coffee going and enjoy a little bit of this early, beautiful morning here in Death Valley before we have to pack up and start heading home. And as always, guys, I hope to see you on the trail.